The greatest power you possess is your ability to choose. Join Lowe's Moore as he reveals how you can begin to maximize that power by exploring yourself on the deepest levels and committing to making lasting and positive changes. Get ready to achieve breakthroughs that will lead to accelerated growth and transformation, because you are now tuned in to The Blueprint.
Why the actions contradict the lamb. I'm fellowshipping when I'm with the fam. That's more relations. That's forming a...
Good evening. This is Lowe's Moore, and welcome back to the Blueprint podcast. I'm excited to be here tonight. I hope everybody's snuggled up at home. Particularly if you're in the Northeast, if you're in New York, where we're expecting snow and a lot of it, and high winds, and it's cold. So, man, get the hot chocolate, get the blankets out, and get ready to get cozy with the family and just enjoy each other, until it's time for you to go out there. The enjoyment will be over when you have to go out there and shovel that snow. But, you might as well make the best of it. I mean, there's a scripture I really love. It says, count all things joy. Well, I don't get a whole lot of joy anymore out of shoveling snow, but when I get out there, I'm gonna have a merry heart while I'm shoveling it, and I'm not gonna wait till the last minute. I'm gonna shovel a little bit at a time, make it light work. But I want to welcome you and thank you for your support for the Blueprint over several months since the pandemic started, and man, it's just been awesome. And here again, this is my seed, or I call a pebble, even though it's a little miniature basketball. I'm going to throw it in the pond because we expect every week that we are going to get a ripple effect. I just dropped it in the pond, and we don't know when the ripple effect will come. Hopefully, when the guests speak and they share their stories, and we share the things that we share each week, that if there's something that you need, hopefully we will say something that you could use right now. And sometimes, man, it's a ripple effect. So there's a ripple. So when you need something the most, you can remember something that one of the guests have said on the Blueprint, and then you can put it into action. You can put it into practice, or you can add it to your blueprint, right? We all need a blueprint. We all need a vision. Scripture says that a people or a person without a vision will perish. So you have to have a blueprint for your life. And please don't delay because you're in a pandemic developing your blueprint, developing your vision. While you're in this pandemic, you should be planning, right? You should have a vision board, right? And you should be planning. So do not wait, right? While you have this time on your hand, write down whatever the dream is, write down whatever the vision is, write down what you're trying to do in the next, in the short term, medium range, long range goals. You need to make those plans now. Do not delay. So I thank you again for your support, and let's jump right into this thing, because I got all my guests are important. All of them, it's like the State Farm commercial where they're trying to figure out, are you going to get this discount because I'm who? Are they going to get this discount because I am who I am? No, well, you get a blessing across the board. So, you just get that blessing, and everybody's supposed to be blessed. So let's jump right into this. But I got an amazing guest tonight, and I'm looking forward to it. So I want to get through our preliminaries. And so number one, I want to start out with the book of the week. And so the book of the week is The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. Very, very good and very powerful book. I'm on chapter 18 in this book. And, some of us we don't really know we know what our mind is. We know what our conscious is, but sometimes we don't know what our subconscious is, because our subconscious has no filter. So it's our mind, our conscious, that gives our subconscious power, right? Because it doesn't know what to choose. Remember in the beginning, when you hear my intro, it says the most powerful thing we have is the ability to choose, right? And so, when our conscious chooses something, right, it goes into our subconscious, but our subconscious does not have a filter, right? And so whatever you feed it, if you feed it something negative, man, ultimately your habits, your behaviors will become negative. But if your conscious feeds your subconscious positive things, right, and then your life is going to be positive. So you have to be very aware of your thoughts. You have to be very aware of what you see with your eyes and what you hear with your ears, because that will impact your life and cause for triggers for depression and anxiety and all kind of things. So make sure you're checking your thoughts, because what you choose will go into your subconscious, and your subconscious will act on it no matter what. So that's my book of the week. It's a very inexpensive book. It's about $6 for the audio. I suggest that you get the audio, right? And I also say that you should get it in print as well. And I think it's about $2 for the print. And it's by Dr. Joseph Murray. And so that's my book of the week. And the word of the week is power. Power. You like I said earlier, right? The most powerful thing you have is the power to choose, the power of choice. Let no one or nothing take away your power, right? Keep your power. Hold on to your power, right? And that's the word of the week. And then we have my good friend Hill Harper and his son Pierce Harper. This is our affirmation moment. And here it is. This is the affirmation. When I get up in the morning, there are things I say to myself, because there's so many negative things that are going on in life. And so sometimes you have to program yourself from the time you get up, right? You have to say things that are positive and powerful. I like to read a lot of scriptures in the morning just to get my mind set and to go. But this affirmation is, I have the power to change my life by changing my thoughts. I have the power to change my life by changing my thoughts, right? If you're thinking something negative, right? You're thinking something negative, you have the power to say, I dismiss that, I remove that, and think of those things that are of good report, right? And then it will shift your mind. So that's our affirmation for this week. And then, I want to pay tribute, and I want to remember Kobe Bryant, right? The late Kobe Bryant. I just got to tell you this quick story real fast. My son and I was in California and visited a couple of weeks I had Phil Jackson on the podcast. And, we went to visit the practice with Phil Jackson, and we met the players. And I didn't really get the chance to meet Kobe, even though he walked right by us, because he didn't think, this is his mindset, his will to win, his passion for the game of basketball. He was upset because he thought that they didn't have a good practice, and that the guys didn't put their all into the practice, and they were into the playoff. And so he was steaming, he was hot, he was mad. And so when he came over, he was fussing at Phil, you shouldn't let these guys get away with that. This is a playoff game. And he was just screaming and yelling and, all kind of stuff like that. And then he rant and raved and threw balls and all kind of stuff like that. And then he went outside and yelled at some other players out there in the parking lot, jumped in his car and just took off. Right. So that was my one and only time of meeting Kobe Bryant, just going and passing. He was just passionate about winning, right? And so I want to remember him, and I also want to remember not only him, but his daughter and the other 7 people that perished during that helicopter crash. Just a tragic situation, and I just want to remember all of them, and remember that every individual was special in their own right, and they belong to some family, and I'm sure those families had a hard time. So if you will, during the course of this evening and moving forward, would you just say a prayer for them? Say a prayer for the families, that they would be comforted during this time of the year. So again, I want to thank you for your support. I want to welcome you to the Blueprint. And so at this time, we want to get right into it. We're going to show you a highlight of our guest, and then I'm going to introduce him, and then we're going to get busy.
Curtis, this has been a decision you've had to make for a while now, one you had to wrestle with. How you good with it now?
Oh yeah. I've been very good with it. I've been actually looking forward to it. I just think this is the right time. I didn't want to go into the season with that lingering on. Wanted to put it to a close right now, and I'm glad.
Wow. Awesome. Just want to welcome to the Blueprint podcast, Curtis Martin.
Hey, how you doing, Lois?
I'm good, Curtis. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Man. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I usually have some I have segments for the podcast, and sometimes I don't like to jump out of order, but I have to, because I saw something in the highlight, right? And I saw Pittsburgh, the University of Pittsburgh, and
right.
Yeah, and I went to West Virginia, so you know how that is with
y'all was the
Mountaineers and Pitt. They didn't get along, but I tell you, when I was a freshman at West Virginia, Tony Dorsett was a senior, right? And I mean, Tony was running all over everybody in the whole nation, and I was watching every weekend him just getting 300 and 280, against wonderful teams, amazing teams, Notre Dame, Penn State. And then I'm sitting in the training table basketball team, football team. And so I hear one of the football players say from West Virginia, man, this week we play against Pitt. Tony, he ain't getting no more than 50 yards. And I don't bet. I'm not a betting guy, but I'm like, this guy is running all over everybody. And I hadn't heard anybody say that we was good. So I was like, look, man, I'll take a bet. I'm not even a betting man, but I guarantee you he gonna get more than 50 yards, right? And then you know how football players are. So particularly the big ones, right? So now they want to get into a fight, with the basketball team, and so we ended up going to the game on that Saturday. I'm sitting on the wall, all the basketball players are sitting along the wall, guys are on the ground, and the first play, kick it off, take it at the 20. And the first play, they kick it out. They used to do that pitch to Tony. Mm-hmm. They pitch it to him, and then he hit that hole. And I was like, oh, my God, they just killed Tony Dorsett, And, I mean, it's like 50 players on the ground, And I'm thinking like, man, they hurt him, man. And I look up, I see something out of the corner of my eyes, and I look up, and there's a guy jumping up and down in the end zone. And there was Tony Dorsett jumping up and down. I didn't even see him go through the hole. He went 80 yards on the first play.
Yeah, Tony was a bad guy, man. Like I don't know too many people who were better than him in college.
Yeah. And then the crazy part was he came to a West Virginia basketball game, was in the student section, and started a riot. They had to take him out of there. I mean, you know how West Virginia and Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Yeah.
So why? I mean, I know you're from Pittsburgh, right?
Right.
So you wanted to stay home, or
Yeah. Well, at the time, Lowe's, football just wasn't a reality to me. I ended up playing football and really committed to it my senior year because all of my friends were getting killed or getting in trouble, and my mother, she kind of forced me to do something after school just to stay out of the way a little bit. And football was the thing that came most natural to me, but I didn't want to do it in an organized form. I enjoyed playing it in gym class or recreationally, but I didn't want to play organized football. I ended up playing, and I earned scholarships to just about every, big college in the country. And I just stayed home because I didn't think that it was going to last. I didn't really consider football something that I wanted to do.
Wow. And since you started with your mom, right? Since you started with your mom, one of my first segments is about the importance of and power of family. Mm-hmm. Right. So can you talk a little bit about mom, dad, siblings, growing up, that experience?
Yeah, well, first of all, my mother's my hero. She, I watched this woman go through hell to raise me, man. My father, he was gone by the time I was 5.5, 6 years old. He was extremely abusive. He was strung out on drugs, and he was clinically, he had some mental issues. I think it was mainly because of all the drugs that he was doing. So he was not a good father, not a good husband. And, sometimes my mother would have to go to work with black eyes because they had gotten into a fight. So he was gone by the time I was 6 at least, but I was raised by my mother. She was a single parent mother, and she had to be the mother and the father. She taught me things that, if it wasn't for her, number one, I know I wouldn't have made it into the NFL. My mother's like my hero, man. People used to always ask me, well, Curtis, like, who's your favorite football player? Like, who's your hero? And, I never really, was a big football fan. And so my answer was always my mother. My mother has done so much. I've watched her sacrifice her entire life just to help me become the man that I am today.
Wow, man. That's an awesome thing. And then when you talk about, I know for me, when you talk about not only your mom, but your grandmother as well, grandparents are so important in the life of a child, man. That's, how was that? Your grandmother play a part in that as well?
Yeah, well, my grandmother, she was like my mother. I was just as close to her as I was my mother. They both took a hand in raising me. I started living in between both of them, and but unfortunately, when I was 9 years old, we found my grandmother murdered. We found her lying in the bed with a knife in her chest and a broken neck and blood everywhere. And my mother literally had to see her mother lying there like that, and that was devastating for her. She said that the only thing that kept her sane was that at 9 years old, because I heard all the people who came in for the funeral, all the grown-ups talking about how they would go crazy if they found their mother like that. And they didn't realize I was listening in the background. And so the only example I had of crazy was my father, and my father wasn't there. And my mother said the only thing that kept her head above water and kept her sane was that when I was 9, I came over to her and grabbed her hand and squeezed it. And I said, "Mom, are you going crazy?" And she said, "No, why would you ask me that?" And I said, "Because I keep hearing people say that you're going to go crazy." And I said, "But if you go crazy, nobody will be here to raise me. I'll be here by myself. So you can't go crazy." And she said that I gave her all the strength she needed to, stick in there and continue raising me.
Wow. Yeah. And were there other siblings, or you were single?
No, I was the only child.
Only child.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you, your mom, and nobody to hang out with,
No. And the unfortunate thing is that we were so poor, Lowe's, that, my mother couldn't afford a babysitter. So, I was 6 years old and I had to come home from school and stay in the house by myself till 8, 9 o'clock at night. Now I have a 6-year-old daughter, and I can't imagine leaving her in the house till 8 or 9 o'clock at night by herself, and this was a daily thing for me for about a year. And by the time I was 7 and I was in second grade, I lived in a project type of environment. So all the kids used to walk to school together and walk back home. What I started doing is on the way back home, I would just peel off from the crowd and go knock on random people's doors and ask them if I could shovel their snow, or ask them if I could rake their leaves. Or sometimes I would go to the grocery store and stand outside and wait for, someone who looked like they needed help carrying their groceries, and ask them if I could help them. They'd give me a quarter. I'd make about a quarter or 50 cents at a time. And then I'd make it home. And because I was petrified to stay in the house by myself, I'd make it home and I would just go and pay my babysitter myself so that I could stay there until my mother got home.
Wow. Yeah, I remember, us having that conversation at and you sharing at one of the Bible studies we had here at the house. And, all I can say, man, is look at you now.
Yeah.
I know at that time, man, it probably looked bleak, and I had a guest on. You would appreciate this. I had a guest on, a young man named Zion. He's about 23, 24 years old. He was born without his legs. And, he went from home to home to home and abuse. Right. And he ended up becoming a wrestler, one of the greatest wrestlers, ever, in high school and in college as well, and has a documentary on Netflix now. And he's about to go into this year's Olympics and the Paralympics and the Olympics and to see what he had gone through and abuse that he took as a kid with no limbs, right, was very powerful. And I was wondering how he was going to make it. And, of course, most of us grew up struggling, but some of us have it at different degrees. And sometimes you wonder how a child survives.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So when you talk about, I grew up in a single parent home. You grew up in a single parent home, and here it is, 2021, and you know, with what's happening today, man, how tough it is, how important is family, how important it is, um, to have a family, to have a mom and a dad. And so to transition now that you are a father, when you look back and your father's not there and here you are, right, as a father and, having a wife and having children. What is that like? I mean, when you think about, look, I always think about a little kid having my dad there, you know,
Mhm.
to say the fatherly things that needed to be said or to put his arms around me and, say whatever. Well, we didn't get that opportunity, but we have an opportunity. You have an opportunity now to give that. So what is that like being a being a husband and being a father and taking care of the family?
Well, yeah, I take pride in being not just a good man, but a good husband and a good father. Those things, come first. Uh, I was very fortunate, very blessed, man. I married the right woman. I got married late. I didn't get married till I was 37. But I waited, and I intentionally waited until my career was over because I know how committed I was to being my best when I was on the field, and I never wanted to deprive my family because of my job. And so I wanted to get my career out of the way first before I got married and had kids, and that's what I did. And I'm glad that I waited because my wife is incredible, man. Like I you know, I think one of the best feelings in the world is knowing that every day you wake up, you're with the right spouse, you're with the right woman, or you're with the right man if you're a woman, whatever your choice is. But I also think that it's somewhat a very awful feeling to wake up every morning and feel like you're not with that right person, and be in the same house day after day. And so being with my wife has been a pleasure. I mean, just like any couple, we have our little disagreements, but I love the way we handle them. I love the way we respect one another and we speak with one another and the way we forgive one another. Because I think that in any marriage, basically any relationship, if you don't have forgiving hearts, then the two people are always going to be at odds with each other, and there's going to be these little secret grudges that people hold. And one of the things that I've seen destroy a lot of marriages are just very little things that occurred that people never forgave each other for, and they just pile up and pile up and pile up to where you get to a point where there was this person who you once said that you would love more than anybody else on earth, and this is the person now that you feel like you hate the most. And so I think forgiveness is a huge part of marriage and relationships, and I'm glad that I have a very forgiving and thoughtful wife.
That's all, man. That's awesome, man. And how many years has it been now? Because I remember when you got married, and
Yeah, it's been 10. It's been 10, and we have two kids. Our oldest is 9, and our youngest is 6. And just being
I
a
remember
father,
that too.
yeah, being a father, man. If you see my kids, they're like little bears. Like wherever I'm at, they're like climbing all on my back and always on me, and they love their daddy, And I mean, they are like a joy. They're just a joy to just be around every day.
Yeah, I mean, I always desired in the past when I got married. That was one of the things because with my mom and her sisters, and they all end up being single parents,
Hmm.
and and they weren't treated well, right, in the interim of in their marriages. And so I always desired to be married, because I wanted to prove that that's not how men act, and so it was a pleasure for me to get married. It was a pleasure to be a husband to my wife and a father to my children. I'm going 38 years.
Wow. Yeah.
Come this August. I got grown people, man. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
more grown people, with my youngest being Isaiah he's about to be 26, right? And, going up to, 34, 35, and seeing them become successful in their careers as principals, as coaches, as actors, and, it's just powerful, man. And I know you're looking forward to, every little graduation from elementary school to middle school to high school to college, man. It's just, I tell you, you're gonna have a ball, man. I mean, if
Yeah.
you,
Well, Lowe's, my goal is to lay the right foundation. I want to be the type of father that my daughters grow up and they look for a man who, they say they look for a man who has the characteristics and the values and qualities of their father. I want to be that right example because, I realized how impactful a father can be, especially for his, for daughters. And so like I say, that's my, other than God, and my wife, that's my number one priority.
wow. And since you mentioned, well, just before I shift into this next conversation, I noticed as I was going through some pictures and stuff like that, man, you kind of got like a little flair, a little style, like not crazy like Walt Frazier, just Walt take it to the extreme, but man, you be sharp, man, and
Thanks, man. Thanks, Lowe's.
I said Curtis be sharp, man. I said, man, I'm gonna have to figure out where he got that hat from, man. I gotta get me one of those. But yeah, man, I like the wear, man. I like the professionalism, that comes with it. We're in a dress down world right now.
Yeah.
Where anything goes, and it's just good to see a black man, right, be sharp, for a young woman, a young man to see you dressed, to see you professional is just for me, that's an awesome image, and
Yeah.
I think,
I think the way you present yourself, I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to wear a lot of expensive things or whatever it may be, but I just believe the way you present yourself says something about you, and so yeah, if I'm doing business, I do a lot of business now, so that's usually the times that I do get dressed up. I like to, have my meetings and, just be appropriate.
yeah. And so I want to talk about how we met. I think it's important because my daughter was a young girl playing AAU basketball in Long Island, New York, and one of the fathers was there, and he gave me a DVD, a CD, right, a CD of a sermon or message by Dr. A.R. Bernard called The Spirit Man. He gave me a copy of maybe 3 or 4 of those tapes, and I was so impressed. I had heard about Dr. A.R. Bernard, Pastor A.R. Bernard. I had heard about him. I mean, I was so turned on by his teaching and his message that I just wanted to share. I just made copies of them and I started handing them out to my friends and stuff like that. And it so happened that one of my friends was running for mayor in the city of Mount Vernon, to make a long story short. And he asked me if I would ask Denzel to come up and support him. And that's Denzel Washington. And so I said, yeah. And so Denzel comes to Mount Vernon, makes his speech. And I was just carrying these CDs around, right? I had them in my pocket to give them out to anybody. So as he was getting in the car, man, I said, man, take a listen to this, man. Like, here, take the CD, take a listen to it. And he said, okay, he put it in his pocket. And then a couple of days later, he called me up. He said, man, Pastor A.R. Bernard, man. Yeah, my man, my good friend, Curtis Martin, he goes to the church. He hosts a Bible study. He's been trying to get me to come to the Bible study, man. You should give Curtis a call. So that's kind of how we met. I call
Right,
you to
right.
talk about the Bible study, and eventually I started going to the Bible study, which I man, me and my wife truly enjoyed that experience. I want to thank you for that. And you know, talk a little bit about the importance and power of faith. Right? We talk about that power of
Well,
family, but faith.
well, first and foremost, I really believe that I'm only alive because of my faith. Or if not alive, I know that I've only accomplished what I've accomplished because of my faith. There's so many things that I know God Himself had to bring me through. And one of the things that my faith has done for me is it's given me a perspective to keep everything that I've been through. It's helped me to keep everything that I've been through in perspective. I realized that all of those hard times, seeing abuse, all the murders that I've been around and witnessed. I probably have 35 to 40 friends or family members that have been murdered, not just died from cancer or something like that. And, growing up in, one of the most murderous neighborhoods in the country, and all the different types of hardships that I've had to go through now, my faith has helped me to keep it in the context where I understand that those things have made me who I am today. Um, I, I've gained a lot of strength having to go through things so hard. It's helped me. One of the things that my faith has done for me that I never even imagined that I could have in my life is just peace. I would trade everything in the world to keep the peace that I have in my heart, man. It's like, coming from such a chaotic background, you could have told me I would have been a trillionaire before you could tell me that I'd have the level of peace that I have in my heart. And I wouldn't trade that for the world, man. So, yeah. And I grew up not believing necessarily in God. And I just remember I had this premonition that I would always die before I was 21. And I had way more than 9 lives. I can't, I just thought that it was just a matter of time. So when I was 20, I got up and went to church for the first time by myself. And, I didn't even believe in God or Jesus or anything. Everyone had been telling me I need God in my life, And so I just went because I felt like my life was coming towards an end. And I remember the first prayer that I ever prayed. I just looked up at the ceiling and I just said, listen, God, I don't know you. I don't know the Jesus cat that people talk about, but just let me live past 21 and I'll get my life together. And I just told God, I said, you got my word. You do that for me if you're real, and, I'll get my life together. And God upheld his end of the bargain, and I'm still trying to uphold mine.
Well, I say you're doing a great job. Yeah. And yeah, that's powerful, man. And you know, um, it's so crazy, and particularly, in what we're experiencing now, man, you have to have, with social injustice and the pandemic and all things that are happening now, man, you've got to have something, you got to have an anchor, something you can hold on to. And yeah, having faith is important. And the crazy thing about the podcast, right? As I was retiring, considering retiring from the Boys and Girls Club, and I started to contemplate about what I would do next. And I thought about, like, getting out to speak, becoming a professional speaker, sharing my experiences and different things that I had learned over the years. And the pandemic hit, right? And I had nothing else to do. But at the bottom of my vision plan, it said podcast. And so that's how I launched the podcast. But maybe about 5 years ago, I was on a program, and a Christian program, and they asked me, was talking to me about something. And I said, I would always like to have a show that would, talk about everything. But the one question I always wanted to ask, like a LeBron James or Michael Jordan, was how important was faith? Two things: how important was family, and how important was faith? And I can't believe, man, that, I mean, after what, 5 or 6 years of thinking about this thing, that I'm on a podcast, and one of my questions I get to ask every Sunday is how important is family and how important is faith.
Yeah, yeah.
And I get it. Regardless of what the answers may be, and I've had different type of guests, who have a different mindset about what they think about faith, right? But at least I get the opportunity to ask the question about the importance of it. And so I thank you for sharing, about your faith. And you are doing a lot of amazing things when it comes to faith and in your relationship with God. So I do appreciate it. You my hero, man. You my hero. And yeah, so talk to me about the importance of education, because sometimes from time to time we have parents and kids listening. Talk about education. Talk about that process of going through. We'll get to the football side of it, but the importance of experience of high school and then going into college and education.
Yeah, well, I think education at any level is extremely important. I'll put it to you this way. I wasn't the best student, but I was smart enough to do well in school. I didn't like school. I didn't like going to school, but I went and I did well. I usually stayed on the honor roll when I was in high school. But when I look at education in a more holistic way, like outside of just what you learn in school, I'm a big student of life. Wisdom is such an important thing to me. I believe that wisdom is one of the most important things that you can have in life, other than your relationship with God. Because at the end of the day, if you know what to do, it alleviates so much of the issues and problems that we face in life. There's a verse in the Bible that I'll never forget. It says, it's in Hosea chapter 4. It says, my people are destroyed for a lack of wisdom. And a lot of times what I find is that it's not that we don't know what to do. It's just that we don't have the discipline to do what we know we should be doing. I remember when I was getting married, Pastor Bernard, he said to me, Curtis, now listen, just because a person says I do when they're standing on, like this stage getting ready to get married, just because they say I do doesn't mean that they can. Just because you say I do and I will be there till death do us part doesn't mean that you can. Doesn't mean that a person has the discipline to do so. And so I've always found that link between wisdom and discipline, where a lot of people, it's not that they don't know what to do. It's just that they don't have the discipline to carry it out. And I've seen so many people suffer simply because of a lack of discipline. I have this quote that says, well, it's one of Pastor Bernard's quotes. He says, discipline is the bridge between thought and accomplishment. It's what takes us from inspiration to achievement. When you think about it, a lot of people, especially in the business world now, so many people have so many great ideas. I can't tell you how many brilliant ideas come across my table or across my desk every week. But I'm never looking at how good the idea is as much as I'm looking at how good the discipline of the organization is, because there's a big difference between having a great idea and having the discipline to execute and bring it to fruition.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, and those are the things that a lot of times we learn from sports.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just look at the play, right? But we don't look what it takes to play, to accomplish what you have accomplished, right? All those things you just finished saying was in your play, right? And the key is whether or not you can pull them out of your play, because some people just play. They don't, the things that cause them to excel and be successful in sports, they can't pull out and apply.
You know, something to that point, Lowe's, football taught me things that my parents couldn't teach me, that my mother couldn't teach me, you know, that they didn't even know to teach me. I've learned so many of the lessons that I carry with me today. Many of the lessons that I'm teaching my kids are lessons that football taught me. Football taught me how to be disciplined. It taught me how to work hard. It taught me how to go the extra mile. It taught me how to play with pain. It taught me all these different things about life. And I'll tell you, my career, the enjoyment that I got out of my career was just knowing that I was a student of life and learning a lot of what I needed to know about life through the game of football. I mean, more so than anything, that is the one thing that I'll take away from the game, is that it was like a third parent to me. And so many of the principles that I've learned. I remember, and I've told this story during my Hall of Fame speech, when Bill Parcells called me off the field and he asked me if I had been working hard. And I said, Coach, you know, of course, I said, like, I don't think I'm good enough to not work hard. You know, I'm always trying to work hard. I try to outwork everybody in this organization, not just other running backs or, you know, other players. I said, Coach, I'll try to outwork you. I try to outwork the janitors, the secretaries. I want to be the hardest working man in the building. I said, but why would you ask me that? And he said, well, you know, son, I just want to make sure that you understand one thing. And he said, as long as you live, never forget this. He said, son, there's a big difference between routine and commitment. He said, some people just do the routine, same routine over and over again. And some people even get better at doing that same routine over and over again. But few people commit to the next level. And even though I felt like I was working hard, just that statement made me work even harder, you know. And to this day, like everything I do, I'm always trying to take it to the next level. I'm always trying to break through that class ceiling.
Wow, and that's very powerful. And so tell me how a guy, you know, that was awesome. I hope you heard that. I mean, remember, you know, this is the blueprint, and at any time, if you guys got questions, you can pop them up on the screen, and then we'll see them and we'll answer them as they come up. And remember, around 8 o'clock or so, we're gonna have some pop-up guests. And that's my brother up there. He said, Kurt, do you have on your Jets outfit? Because he's gonna pop on here at 8 o'clock, and he's gonna ask you some questions. He's a diehard Jets fan. I mean,
oh, yeah.
Diehard. Yeah.
I haven't had that outfit on in what, 15, 16 years now.
Yeah. So how does a guy, you know, I know your mom, you were talking about your mom saying you have to have something to do, and she kind of pushed you to, and it was something you didn't really want to do, even though you could do it. How does a guy go on to college and then go to the pros, and talk a little bit about that college experience and then into the pros?
Yeah, well, you know, at the end of the day, the scholarship, I just didn't want to look like a dummy. I just didn't want to look like a guy who had scholarships to all these schools and turned them down. But I really wanted to turn them down because college just wasn't in my future, and it wasn't in my plans. But I remember on draft day, when I was about to get drafted into the NFL, you know, they before you get drafted, they'll call you and they'll say, you know, well, actually, Bill Parcells called me and he said, son, we'd like to know if you want to be a New England Patriot. And I said yes to him and hung up the phone afterwards. And everyone, you know, was there and they were jumping around and happy. And I just looked at everyone and said, listen, I just don't want to play football. This is not what I want to do with my life. And there was a guy there, his name was Leroy Joseph. And he said to me, he said, Curtis, he said, I know you don't really love football or anything. He said, but maybe football is just that vehicle that God has given you to do all those other wonderful things that you say you want to do with your life. And it was literally from that moment on that football took on a different meaning for me. And so I think the only reason why my career was as good as it was because I was playing for a purpose that was bigger than the game. I think if I just loved football, football wouldn't have gotten out of me what it did. But I always saw that every yard I would gain, every touchdown I would score, it was just opening up more doors for me to reach more people.
Wow. Now I hope y'all all listening to that, because I always say on the show, man, there's nuggets, or as back a few years ago, Damian Lillard had the commercial with Love, and they was talking about dropping dimes. You remember that? Back in the day, people used to say, my grandfather used to say, "Man, I'm about to give you this nugget."
Right.
and you just gave a nugget. You just dropped a dime of something that's very, very powerful. And a lot of people are just playing for the money. They're playing for the fame. They're not playing for purpose. And that's what you said. Here's my vehicle. Here's my gift. I'm going to use it as a platform to help people and to reach people. And that's very powerful. I hope y'all heard that out there. And I mean, when I was talking about earlier about that, the ripple effect, right? Somebody's going to pick that up. Your people used to say stuff to you, even your parents used to say stuff to you, and you hear it right there. You go, yeah, and you didn't pay attention, right? All of a sudden, when you got in trouble, it came to your memory, right? It's like, oh shoot, my mom. Yeah. So I hope that somebody either pick that nugget up or that dime up that you just said, or somewhere down the road said, I was listening to the Blueprint, and Curtis Martin said. Right.
Yeah. That's the way life works,
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I'll never forget when I was 23, a guy gave me one of the most useful pieces of advice that I think I've ever had. He knew the type of background I came from, and I wasn't the same person that I am today. I was much more hard-hearted person, and I was a product of my environment, right? And I remember he said to me, Curtis, listen, man, the best thing you can do in life is to just find out how things work and then work them, and it was something very simple, but I felt like that really inspired me to figure that out, because I realized up to that point, you know what? I haven't done a good job at figuring out how life works, because there has to be more to life than what I'm experiencing.
Right.
And what I found was that when I began to figure out how life worked, and I remember a guy saying, you can't change your life by trying to change your life. He said, just like you can't change your attitude by trying to change your attitude, you have to change your thoughts. And when you change your thoughts, you change your beliefs. When you change your beliefs, you change your attitude. When you change your attitude, you change your behavior. And when you change your behavior, you change your performance. And it's when you start to perform differently that you change your life. He said, so just understand, you cannot change your life by trying to change your life. And that just really stuck with me, and I started working on my thought life. And I saw how my thought life, led me to my beliefs, and my beliefs started changing my attitude, and so on and so on. And eventually, I really did change my life, and I'm very grateful and humbled that I've been able to do so. Right.
Now, you will attest that we had a conversation a few weeks ago about coming on the show, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you would attest that we didn't talk anything about thoughts, right?
No.
Changing thoughts, thinking, so forth and so on. So I started off with the show, right, about changing. That was the affirmation, right? You change your thought, you change your life, right? And it says, I have the power to change my life by changing my thoughts. Now, we didn't have a conversation about that, but
right.
It's how God does. I like what God does. He brings.
Well, that's very true. But again, the thoughts is where it starts, and there's a chain of events, but it starts with you changing your thoughts, the way you think about something. Going through all the stuff that I've gone through, Lowe's, I realized that I had to change the way I even thought about those things, no matter how horrific or, I guess, unfair I may have thought they were. I had to change the way I thought about them. And I have these 5 reasons why I say God allows problems in our lives. And for me, it really helped me to put my life in a framework that helped me to grow from it instead of being stifled by it, or instead of being stuck in a bad place, you know. And the 5 reasons that I do a lot of writing, but the 5 reasons that I say God allows problems in your life is: number 1, to direct you, to inspect you, to correct you, to protect you, and to perfect you. Like, it doesn't matter what problem you've ever gone through in your life, it can fall under one of those 5 categories. And when you begin to view life from that perspective, when you're dealing with a problem, and your mind begins to think, okay, is this directing me? Is this inspecting me? Is it correcting me? Is it protecting me, or is it perfecting me? Like, when you start thinking about problems in that way, you begin to see the opportunity in problems, and they cease to be a problem, and they start to be something that you can grow from and that you can move forward from, instead of being pulled backwards by.
Yeah, true. And that's why I think that, even the pandemic, we're in a reset. And I said earlier that while you're in the pandemic, don't get stifled.
Yeah,
you know, think about your dreams, think about your vision, think about what it is that you want to do, and you've been dreaming about, and start to put them start to write those things down, start to plan on those things now, because at the end of the day, we're going to make an adjustment with the pandemic and social justice issues and so forth and so on. And we have to be ready on the other side for opportunity when it's all, well, it goes to whatever, how it comes out. If it's
right.
over, or however, business is still going to be done. Business is being done right now. Things are still happening right now. People are still dreaming right now. People are still creating ideas right now. So while you're in this moment of reset, right, be planning, be getting your things together. So yeah, and 8:00 in about 3 minutes, we're gonna have a few pop on guests, but talk to me in these next 3 minutes about, man, it's just, whenever I see somebody make the Hall of Fame, I just think, like, man, this is just awesome, right? What was the feeling? You accomplished, you became successful, and this is like the pinnacle of your sport, is to get in the Hall of Fame. What was that experience like?
Well, it was the first time that I felt like I was actually happy to be a part of a group, and what the Hall of Fame meant for me was that I did something that I didn't want to do at a Hall of Fame level. And so it really inspired me, because it made me think, all right, going forward in life, all the things that I want to do, I should just kill it if I was able to do this, and do it to this level. And so for me, more so than anything, more so than it was like, yay, I'm in the Hall of Fame, it was more so, you know what, I'm really grateful that I listened to my mother, number one, that I worked hard and proved to myself that I could achieve something even if I didn't want to do it, that I could achieve it. I could achieve something at a very high level. So I'm more so humbled by something like the Hall of Fame, and very grateful for it, because, I'm very clear of how easy, my life could be so much different, so much different than what it is. So yeah, I'm just grateful for it, man.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I mean, I tell you, the one time, we were talking back and forth and going to the Bible studies down in the city, and then I had asked you, I just say, it says humility precedes blessings,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we can do something in our life and we can feel a certain way about ourselves that we're above all this.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, we had been together at Bible studies and stuff like that. We really didn't, you know, we really wasn't spending a whole lot of time together. So, you know, but I mean, every time I call you, call me back, and we've had conversations, a lot of conversations, and then and I had asked you to come to, you know, to stop by a Bible study I was having at my house, and you know, I didn't know whether you would or not. You know, he's like, okay, oh yeah, I'll stop by. You know how people, you know,
Yeah.
and literally when you stop by, I mean, in my heart, I heard that thing says, humility precedes blessings,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you came in to study and you gave your testimony and you blessed those guys. I mean, many of them will never forget that night, right? I mean, because you were sitting there so unassuming, right? And they're sitting there, and everybody's looking at you like, I've seen this guy before, but I just don't know who he is, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And they found out who you were, and you shared with them, and I mean, you touched their life. I mean, you know, forever, and it was a blessing, and we could just feel the humility. I mean, it was just the anointing was just so powerful that night. And I want to thank you for stopping by. I want to thank you for that humility. It was just amazing. And guys I see who are part of the church, they talk about it all the time, man. I remember Curtis Martin stopped by. I was like, yeah, I remember Curtis stopped by, you know. And so I say thank you to that. And
Well,
yeah.
you know, thanks for inviting me, man. You know, but to that point, Rose, one of the most dangerous things I've seen in life is pride. You know, I know what pride did to me previously when I was much younger. I've seen what pride has done to so many other people. You know, I'll never forget one of my most vivid memories of pride was so my father, when he was on drugs, you know, I would still go and visit him sometime, and he would take me out sometime to when he was going to go get drugs or whatever it may have been. And there was this other woman that he dated, I guess. They were like drug buddies, basically. And they were both on crack, right? And the guy who I guess was the drug dealer, he got into an argument with the woman, you know, and they're going back and forth. And this is an older guy in the hood who we all know, you know. And she said something to him that was somewhat embarrassing. And it was literally out of pride. You know, this dude pulled out a gun, shot her in the face, basically shot her over $5 worth of crack. But it was literally because just out of pride that he did it, because, you know, there were people around, and when she said certain things, you know, everybody, ooh, she said that? What? You gonna let her say that? You know, and really egged him on. And dude pulled out a gun, shoots her in the face, kills her over $5. And it's like, for me, I never forget how that level of pride, you know, and that's something that I desire to not have in my life. I mean, I think we all have some levels of pride, but you know, and a lot of people, the problem is that a lot of people think humility is a weak thing, but I think it takes a strong man to be humble, you know, and because humility is saying, no, I have the power to do whatever I need to do, but I just choose not to use it, you know. And I think the way you use your power is a true telling sign about who a person is. And a lot of people abuse their power.
Wow. Yeah, and that was my key word, power. Yeah. And at this time, we're going to ask for, we got a young man back there who's, I remember his dad was a great high school track coach who passed away a few years ago. And he was in the Boys and Girls Club with us, you know, as a young man, played football for Mount Vernon High School. And now he's the longest tenure of for Mount Vernon High School football program, and he's going to come pop on and meet you and ask you a question. Jared Dendy is going to come on.
Hey, Jared, how you doing, man?
Uh, Nice to meet you.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Moore, for having me on.
You're welcome.
Isaiah Moore as well. So yeah, you guys talked about so much. You covered some of my questions already. Uh, you know, when you came into the league, I wasn't thought of. So I'm not a Patriots fan. I'm not a Jets fan. I'm a Cowboys fan. However,
Okay.
I always say that I'm a Cowboys fan first. I'm a football fan second. I'm a student of the game. You know, as a coach, I watch a lot of film. I've seen you play. Just amazing. Um, just explosiveness. I love how you finish off runs, your jump cuts. Just your vision is beautiful. So
Thank you.
I wanted to elaborate. I want you to elaborate a little bit on. You mentioned earlier about your rough background growing up. Um, I've actually watched your Hall of Fame speech a few times. Um, I coach here at Malvern High School. We have a partnership with my sister's place, and we do a lot of conversations about just life, relationships, domestic violence, or something like that. So my question to you is, just from everything you've been through, relationships at home, what you experienced, traumas, how did you stay focused on other things like school and I know you said you didn't like school, but like you said, you was on the honor roll for the most part. Also, you also didn't like football growing up, but you don't get to where you got without putting in the work, the hard work, um, outside of practice, in practice, whether you liked it or not. Obviously, you put a lot of time, a lot of work into it. So, how did you like cope with everything and focus on the things you were doing?
Well, you know what? Number one, you usually don't just get to do what you want to do and what you like to do in life. I think you have to earn that right. And that was one of the things that I learned at an early age is that whatever it is that I really wanted to do, I had to pay some type of price for it. Like in life, nothing is free. Everything costs something. And I realized that at an early age, and it was really about what price did I want to pay for it. So I knew that in order for me to reach as many people and help so many lives and change so many lives, especially the way I saw it in my head, that there was going to be a severe price that I had to pay. And for me, a lot of that was all the hell that I had to go through and overcome. And a huge part of it, and this is almost one of those undercover things that a lot of people are dealing with and they don't even know it, is that number one, you have to forgive. You have to forgive people who have done things that were wrong to you, who have offended you, whatever. And also you have to forgive yourself. A lot of people are going through life and they're bitter and they're trying to move forward in life and have a good life with a bitter heart. And those two things just don't mix, man. One of the most powerful and beyond all the Hall of Fames and accomplishments and accolades that I've accumulated throughout my life, the most powerful thing and the best thing that I think I've ever accomplished was finally getting my mother to forgive my father. Because she was one of the most bitter women that you would ever meet in your entire life. And now to see how happy my mother is, like that's one of the biggest joys of my life. But it really only came through forgiveness. I always talk about how there's two types of forgiveness in life, right? There's transactional forgiveness, which means You know, Jared, you come to me, you say, Kurt, I'm sorry, man. I didn't mean to do that to you. And so you're coming to me and asking me for my forgiveness, and I give my forgiveness to you. And I say, all right, Jared, no problem, man. Like, it's all good. I forgive you. So you asked me for something, I gave you back something. That's transactional forgiveness. But what I found to be the most important type of forgiveness is unilateral forgiveness. Unilateral means that the forgiveness is just going one way. Whether whether you're sorry or not, Jared, I'm choosing that I'm going to forgive Jared no matter what. See, that was the only way I got through a lot of the stuff. Like my father, all the stuff that he did, he'd never be able to make that up to me. I just had to give him unilateral forgiveness. That means it's going one way, whether he asked for forgiveness or not. And I just tell you, man, like being able to just cleanse your heart of that bitterness. A lot of people don't realize that that's what's keeping them bound to their situations is their grudges and their bitterness. And one last thing I'll say about that, I read this study that a group of psychologists and a group of psychiatrists did one day, man. And what they were trying to find was why people become bitter in life. And it was interesting because after all of these 600 people who they were studying for about a year and a half, I think 18 months, what they found was that people don't become bitter because of what they experience in life, but they become bitter because of how they remember what they experienced in life. And so the only way I was able to get my mother to forgive my father was when I changed the way she remembered it. I said, Mom, listen, you've been bitter and mad at this guy for 22 years. I was just like, so it's almost like he's ruining your life without even being in your life. And I just asked her, I said, like, do you think that we would have the life that we live? Do you think that I would be the man that I am today if he was there for those 22 years? No, I would have probably been something like him. So you should be thanking God that he was gone. And it's like when she really just grasped that and it changed the way she thought about that situation, it made it much easier for her to forgive him. And before my dad died, man, my mother was cooking for him, taking him to his doctor's appointments, going to go get his medicine. And it was just a beautiful thing to see.
Wow. So Jared, thanks, man. I hope that answers your question, man. Thanks a lot for coming up, popping on, man.
Definitely. Appreciate it.
Yeah, but focus is key, Jared. I mean, and those are just some of the things that you have to get out of your, I think like things like bitterness and unforgiveness, those are some of the most distracting things that you can experience in life. And sometimes we just have to forgive ourselves and move on and forgive our situations just so that we can move on, so we don't stay stuck.
Yes, totally agree.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jared. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jared. Nice meeting you, man.
Let me introduce you real quick before our next guest come on. This is my grandson.
Oh.
Dakota.
Hey, buddy. How old is he?
7 months.
Oh, wow.
You can say hi?
Handsome little guy. Hey, buddy.
He's right there. He's over there. Oh, well, he was there. Yeah. Just wanted to say hello before he go. He's on his way home. I see you later. Right. Huh? He's looking like, what is going on now? Oh man, I think we got Steve backstage. Where's Steve at?
Hey, Lowe's and Curtis. Thank you so much, man. Brilliant career and awesome show tonight, Lowe's. Thank you very much. Curtis, your Hall of Fame career has taken you on a long journey, but there's a lot of kids out there. I kind of listening to what's going on now that are struggling during the pandemic, that might be in single families or dealing with all kinds of adversities, and sports is being taken away, music and drama programs and things like that. I'm actually a psychologist, and I heard you talking, and a lot of the kids now that lost their senior years, graduations and scholarships and things like that, proms, and they're having difficulty, dealing with college life and things. What advice would you give to young people, that athletes or not, that are really going through a challenging time right now?
Yeah, well, again, I think it's how can you use those challenges to become a better person? You know, a lot of times we just submit to the thought that because we're going through a hard times that things have to get harder. I believe that, you know, when you think about it this way, Steve, think about it from this perspective. Most big businesses, some of the biggest businesses in the world, they're only so big because they solve a big problem. You know, and that's kind of the way I think about life. You know, problems are there and we encounter problems, but the more you overcome these problems, the more resilient you become. The more you learn to persevere, the better you get. I mean, we all learn once we overcome things. And you know, it's much easier said than done, but you have to think about what's the alternative. The only alternative is to give into it or be a victim of it. You know, I've just chosen to not allow myself to be a victim of any circumstances. I realize that no matter what I go through, it doesn't have to define me. And I just think a lot of us, and myself, I was guilty of it in the past too. We let the circumstances, and many of them which are so far out of our control. No one can control the coronavirus. You know, there's nothing that we can do about it. So we either make the most of these times or we allow these times to, you know, take out the best of us. And, you know, you just have to make a decision to not allow that to happen. I believe that all change begins with a decision. You know what I mean? So it's something that you have to decide. You can't just wait and see how things turn out. No, like you can't wait, especially in a situation like this. You have to make a decision where you want to end up at the end of the day, and you have to start working in that direction.
Well, thank you. One quick last question. The Hall of Famers that you are in contact with now, who is really taking you, you know, become friends with that maybe you weren't friends with before?
Well, you know what's interesting is that the Hall of Fame is really like a family unit. Like we've gone on trips together. There's a huge group of us who have gone to Israel. We've gone to the Vatican. You know, we met with the Pope. We do a lot of things together, of course, before COVID. But I've become very close friends with so many Hall of Famers that some of them I didn't even know before I was inducted into the Hall of Fame. One of the guys who I've become really close with is Jim Brown. You know, probably one of the greatest football players ever. He and I are chess partners, and we play chess together. You know, sometimes I'll go out to California and we'll sit out by his pool and play chess for about 7 hours straight. So, yeah, he's been an amazing guy, and he's filled with a wealth of wisdom. And so it's been really great just getting closer and getting to know Jim.
Wow. Thank you so much, Lowe's. Thank you, Curtis. God bless, man.
Thank you. You too.
Steve. Yeah, I would think Steve and Carmine back there, they produced the show for me. They helped me get started with the podcast. They do a great job. And Steve has a show called The Chapters Rap. You know, he has a lot of athletes and all kind of people on there, but they're just great individuals. And during this pandemic, they just really jumped on board and say, "Hey, let me help you out." So that's been awesome. We got a couple more guests. We're gonna bring on the Super Jet fan and also someone you would know. We're gonna bring them both on at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah, Curtis and Curtis. That's my brother Curtis.
Hey, Isaiah. What's up?
Hey.
Hey. How you doing, Curtis?
What's
good
up,
to
Curtis?
see you, Isaiah. I ain't seen you in a long time, man.
Yeah, good to see you too. Yeah.
I figured I'd bring Isaiah on because you asked about him, though, you know, when I was talking to you. So I said, well, you got to jump on. Curtis asked about you, man.
Yeah.
So Curtis is a super Jet fan. Right? and he's also a fan of your hometown team, which is the Pittsburgh Steelers, right?
Yeah.
When I was at West Virginia, right, he was rooting for the Jets when he was rooting for Pittsburgh, you know. So, Kurt, you know, it's on you, man. What you got to say, man?
Kurt, what's going on? How you doing?
I'm all right. How you doing, man?
Now, before he asked the question, Curtis also played football in high school and basketball in high school and received a full scholarship to go to Nebraska University. Got drafted in the NBA as well. Played more professional basketball. So, go ahead, Kurt.
Oh, okay. Kurt, who did you pattern your running game by after?
You know something? I never really patterned my game after anybody because, you know, for me, I realized football was somewhat new to me. I didn't even think that I could play at that level. And I'll never forget Bill Parcells telling me, he said, son, I see something special in you, but you seem like you're not sure of yourself. And he said, and I know how great you could be, but I can't want it more than you want it, you know? And you know, so I can't say that I really ever patterned my game after anyone, but the one person who reminded me of myself was Walter Payton. And it was more so the attitude, more so than his style and all that. It was just that he was one of those dudes who you almost had to kill to get him out of the game. And, you know, from a mental standpoint, that would be the person who I feel like I patterned my game after, if it was anyone.
Okay. So now, you know, with this Jets, the way the Jets is going on now, you know, they kind of making me a little upset and mad the way they getting rid of players. You know, how you get rid of first round picks and doing all this other, that's not good. What would you think about if you was in this position now that these guys are in now, going to different teams and just leaving?
If I was, you're saying if I was one of the players?
Yeah.
Well, you know something, man, you know, I had to leave from New England and go to the Jets. And the one thing that you come to understand about professional sports is that it's a business, and it's first and foremost a business. It's not to say that owners or, you know, staff doesn't care about you, but at the end of the day, it's literally about just putting the best people out there on that field that you feel gives you the best chance to win. That's what it boils down to, you know. And again, I definitely want to make sure that it doesn't come across as though it's strictly business. I mean, these owners and staff, coaches, you know, they really build real relationships, but everyone involved in professional sports, if they don't know, they learn very quick that this is just the way it goes.
So, Kurt, thanks, man.
All right.
Jumping on, man.
You're welcome.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Curtis.
You too. Stay safe.
All right, you too, buddy.
All right.
Isaiah? No, you don't have a question. I just said we're going to end this.
Yeah, it's just good to say what's up to Isaiah.
Yeah, it's just a dialogue, you know. We're here to just talk, you know. I mean, for me, these last 8 or 9 months have been pretty difficult. I mean, my dad will tell you I've been in the house pretty much more than anybody. I've been in the house since March. Other than going out to the doctor and a few things, checking in on a few things. But mentally, it's a real drain to just be able to sit in the house and just like not really be active, you know. So, but funny story. I know you played for the Patriots and the Jets. And I was in the city. I had the opportunity to ring the stock market bell, and I met a lot of great people at the time. And I think the president for the Jets at the time asked me, he's just like, "Are you a Jets fan?" At the time, Rex Ryan was coaching as well, and I just, you know, I kind of like. I chuckled a little bit because for me, I'm like, I think the Jets can be way better than where they are, you know, especially with all the different moving parts and pieces and different things like that, especially with a lot of the New York teams. You know, everybody feels like when you come to New York, that's like a championship game in itself, you know, right. whether it's the Garden, whether it's Yankee Stadium. Everybody wants to beat a New York team. So, but I kind of chuckled a little bit because for me, I'm a Knicks fan, longtime Knicks fan, love the Knicks. But I'm a Ravens fan, and partly due to people that I know, and I just like it's hard to really kind of remove myself from it. But no hate to the Jets. The Jets will get better. I tell my dad every time because we always watch the 76ers and watch the process they went through. They went from getting all these first round picks and trying to figure it out. You got guys who nobody really knows. And then now you look at them and they're at the top of the East Coast, as the best team. So it's all about the process. So
right.
Yeah. So
the Jets, they could definitely do better than what they're doing right now.
Yeah, sure.
Well, they can't do too much worse.
Yeah. What do you think about Deshaun Watson? Yeah, I mean, he said that his first choice would be to go to the Jets.
Oh, that'd be great. I mean, any team that he goes to, he's going to instantly elevate that team's chances of, playing for a championship. And if they put the right supporting cast around him, I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And so all he needs is a good supporting cast. I mean, you look at, I don't think he had the most talented guys this year, and he led the league in passing yards, I believe. And so, and that's taken DeAndre Hopkins away from him. Just imagine if DeAndre was there. So I think he's a phenomenal talent. I think he's one of those guys that I would put in the class of the future of football. Him, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, those guys, they're the future of football. And so I just wish him the best wherever he goes.
Well, yeah, and definitely, when good guys like that come to an organization, man, it makes other good guys want to come.
Yeah. He has the ability to make the people around him, better. It's just like the effect that you see Tom Brady down. They got some talent down in Tampa Bay, but if Tom Brady wasn't there, they wouldn't be going to the Super Bowl, in my opinion, this year.
That's true. Yeah.
And I think all of those pieces, they brought a lot of those pieces in because of Tom Brady. You can't just you leave the Patriots and now you're going into a place where they have to all right, this is a set just for you. This team is just for you, set up the way you want it. And then hopefully, when he does decide to retire, they still have that place where you can probably maybe draft a quarterback and then you already be set to kind of be for the future. Because they kind of just moved on from Jameis Winston and just said, we're going to ride out with Tom. We got him for at least 2 years. Let's see what's next. And Tampa Bay is going to be good for a really long time.
Yeah, they got a good team. And again, what people underestimate about Tom is his ability to lead. And most people don't realize how important that is on a team. If you have a good leader in the locker room and you have a solid locker room, you always have a chance to win any game, because in the NFL, the talent is almost parallel across the board. Everybody has a lot of very talented people on every team, some a little more than others. But I think what we saw in New England was a guy like Tom who made everybody better, because they by far didn't have the best talent, but they were always in the Super Bowl year after year.
Yeah, I got a question before we got to get off here in a couple of minutes. We had talked about in the past, and you had talked about ownership. How is that? You still dreaming about ownership?
Yeah. Well, for me, it's become more of a reality. I haven't done it, but I've had some real opportunities to do it. And there were situations where I actually, kind of turned down because I just didn't think it was the right situation for me. But I'm looking forward to it one day. I'm not in as much of a rush, might not be the right word, but I'm not as anxious to do it as I used to be, because I have so many other things going on. And I just feel like, my position, my running back position, I'll never forget, Bill Parcells told me one day, he said, son, when I was a rookie, he said, I think you're trying too hard. You're trying to you try to score a touchdown every time you get the ball. He said, you just have to learn to be a little more patient. Just let the game come to you. And, that's kind of where I feel like I'm at as far as ownership goes. I'm at the point where, I feel composed. I feel confident and I know that it can happen. Now I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to wait until the game comes to me, the right situation.
Wow. Well, Curtis, we're at that time, and I want to say thank you, man, for taking time out of your schedule and joining me this evening. It was a powerful experience, man. I will stay in touch, and keep me in your prayers, man, as I will do for you as well.
I appreciate it, man. And it was my pleasure being here. And Isaiah, it's good to see you, man. And we'll be talking in the future.
Okay.
All right.
So thank you guys again for another evening with the Blueprint. Look forward to next week as we have our Super Bowl special is going to be at 1:30 in the afternoon because we don't want to mess with the Super Bowl. So we're going to go 1:30 to 3 next week. We got Marvin Williams Sr. on, father, an NBA dad. Marvin Williams played 15 years in the NBA, and his dad is going to be on to tell his story about raising his sons. And that's going to be an awesome experience. So, again, thank you. God bless you, and have a wonderful week.
All right, guys.
We really hope you enjoyed this episode of Lowe's More, the Blueprint Podcast. Stay connected and follow us at our website, www.lowesmore.com. That's LOWESMOORE.com. You can also join the discussion on Twitter at Lowe's More and on Facebook at Lowe's More Jr. As always, thank you for pushing your mindset towards a better reality. This concludes the most thought-provoking portion of your day. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast to stay fully up to date with everything we're up to. Until next time, be kind to yourself and each other.
What they teaching is a joke. I ain't buying it like I'm broke. Insufficient funds for insignificant.